Welcome to the dazzling world of Qatar, a land where the desert sands live harmoniously futuristic skyscrapers. Qatar, a small but incredibly dynamic nation on the Arabian Peninsula, is a place where history, culture, and opulence converge. Do you know that Qatar isn't just known for its futuristic skyline, but it also boasts a rich and diverse culture that's rooted in its Arabian heritage? Today, we will explore life in Qatar from the perspective of someone born there. Let's begin. Let's start with the birth of a baby in Qatar. Home births are forbidden in Qatar, and midwives are usually affiliated to or a part of a hospital. Being pregnant and single in this country is a crime. In most public hospitals, husbands are not permitted to accompany their wives during childbirth. A naming ceremony is traditionally held on the 7th day after a child is born. During this ritual, the baby's name is chosen, frequently with important meaning, and is announced. Akika is a custom in which a sacrifice, usually a sheep or goat, is offered to commemorate the birth of a child. If it's a boy, it's customary to sacrifice 2 animals. On the other hand, if the baby is a girl, 1 animal is sufficient for the custom. The meat is subsequently donated to family, friends, and those in need. The call to prayer, or adhan, is whispered in the baby's right ear shortly after birth, while the lakama is murmured into the baby's left ear. This is done to summon God's presence and to introduce the infant to Islamic teachings. After the birth, some Qatari families hold a henna ceremony. To commemorate the occasion, henna is applied to the baby's hands, and close family and friends may also have henna applied. Friends and family frequently give blessings for the baby's health and future. Clothes, toys, and other goods for the newborn can be given as gifts. An Islamic prayer, also known as dua, is an important aspect of the birth process. Family members and friends may read particular passages from the Quran or pray for the child's well-being and prosperity. Pregnant women in Qatar enjoy dates, laban, a type of buttermilk, and makbous, a rice dish. Staying hydrated is critical, especially given the country's scorching heat. To avoid dehydration, pregnant women are encouraged to drink enough water throughout the day. Fish is popular in Qatar due to its coastal location, although pregnant women are advised to avoid raw or undercooked fish due to the risk of foodborne illness. The names of Arabs in the Gulf are quite easy. Unlike in the West, where parents often choose first and middle names, only the first name is chosen by the parents in the Gulf. The father's name is always the middle name, and any more middle names reflect the names of the grandpa, great-grandfather, and so on, with the tribal name being the last name. So, if you encounter someone named Ali Mohammed Ahmad al-Asa, you know his father's name is Mohammed and his grandfather's name is Ahmed, or, more precisely, his father's name is Mohammed Ahmed al-Asa. Sometimes, the name will contain bin or bint for females in between the names. This simply means son of or daughter of, in the case of bint. So, in the preceding example, the gentleman may use the more formal al-Asa bin Mohammed al-Asa. Circumcision is an important practice in Qatar, and it is considered a sunnah, a recommended tradition for Muslim males. It is often performed during early childhood, typically between the ages of 7 and 10. The procedure symbolizes cleanliness and purity in Islamic tradition. Now, let's talk about education. Qatar has an excellent education system that includes both public and private schools. All youngsters aged 6 to 16 are required to attend school. While primary education is required for 6 years, all public schooling is free. Private schools are also actively encouraged, with all fees subsidized. 3 years of middle school follow, with all public and private institutions following a common academic program. Classes are held in Arabic, and required subjects include English, math, science, and Islamic studies. Although the quality of instruction varies by school, rote memorization and repetition are standard teaching strategies. Karum al-Dahrui, a game that requires pushing or rolling a metal wheel, Sebah, a pebble game, and Tak Tak Taiga, Duck Duck Goose, are some of the most popular games among youngsters in Qatar. Secondary school can signify several things in Qatar, depending on the institution. Preparatory students range in age from 13 to 15, while secondary students range in age from 16 to 18. Qatari students take the secondary school certificate at the age of secondary school, which assesses how much they have learnt across numerous topics. After Ramadan, children go to houses in their neighborhood and sing and dance to celebrate Eid. To commemorate Adiyah, elders offer money or sweets to the visiting children. Surprisingly, children who begin working do not qualify for the Adiyah. Some families will give toys and other gifts instead of money. Teenagers are expected to communicate with their parents in a courteous manner at all times. The majority of Qatari students attend public schools, which are gender separated from primary to university level. Football is the most popular sport among Qatari teenagers. Basketball and volleyball are also becoming more popular. Camel and horse racing, fishing, and boating are also popular pastimes. Girls are generally underrepresented in sports outside of school. Teenage girls could spend their evenings walking with their buddies. Qatar adheres to Islamic traditions that encourage humility and commitment to Islamic ideals. Public displays of affection, PDA, are generally discouraged, and local conventions and traditions must be respected. Couples are required to behave with prudence and decency. As a result, it is critical to understand and follow Qatari laws. Cohabitation and extramarital affairs are prohibited in Qatar. Engaging in such acts may result in legal ramifications, such as incarceration or deportation. Gender segregation is practiced in numerous public venues in Qatar, including malls, restaurants, and public transit. However, there are a few outliers, such as international hotels and other Western-style establishments, where mixed-gender socialization is more acceptable. According to Qatari law, the maximum work week is 48 hours, 8 hours per day for 6 days, or 60 hours, 10 hours per day for 6 days if overtime is paid. During the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims work a limit of 36 hours each week, or 6 hours per day for 6 days. Laws prohibit Qatari women and men the right to equal pay. Women, on the other hand, do not always receive it. They also face challenges in obtaining high-level positions in commercial firms and the government sector, despite the fact that women account for more than half of all college graduates. Gender discrimination in the workplace is not illegal. Laws prohibit women from working in jobs that are broadly characterized as unsafe or improper. Women must also seek permission from a male guardian to work in the government and special institutions. Despite the obstacles, some women have managed to succeed professionally. The majority of weddings are arranged. Typically, the groom's mother and sisters make early inquiries about prospective wives, discuss the prospects with the young man, and, if he is interested, approach the prospective bride's family. That woman has the option of accepting or declining the proposal. Marriages are frequently arranged between families with comparable histories, and it is normal for multiple members of two lineages to marry. Marriages between Qataris and other Gulf Arabs are widespread, while marriage to non-Gulf citizens is discouraged by the government. To marry a non-citizen, one must obtain official approval, and the citizen may be required to give up the promise of government job and other perks. Typically, a couple will have two wedding celebrations, one for the bride and one for the groom, so that both sexes can congratulate the new couple's family. The groom will arrive at the end of the lady's celebration, around midnight or later, to receive his wife, along with any male members of her family, such as her father or brothers. The groom's side celebration is usually held in an outdoor tent, either classic Bedouin design with an open front and traditional red-covered cushions, or modern fancy tent with air conditioning units and other facilities. The tent and its position are determined by the groom's family's wishes. Following the groom, his family members, the bride's family members, and all of the guests' ritual greetings, there may be sword dancers or musical performances by an oud musician on the traditional stringed instrument. Women, including female family members from either side, are not permitted to attend this event, which is frequently videotaped. A bride wears a lavish white bridal gown with an elaborate trail embellished with jewels at every Qatari wedding. The groom dresses in the customary white robes known as the thobi and the bishit in Qatar. On top of the thobi, the bishit is a thin black cloak with a gold embroidery border. At weddings, the bishit is frequently worn by the groom's father or even the bride's father, in addition to the groom. Another local tradition that has been maintained for decades is the melka. It is observed to commemorate the groom's request from the bride's father for her hand in marriage. The melka is held on the night of the marriage contract's official signing. Surprisingly, the melka is hosted by the bride's family. Typically, the invitees are mostly the couple's close acquaintances. The bride's family may elect to exhibit all of the presents that the groom has purchased for his bride during the wedding. Women's accessories, apparel, a car, gold accessories, and other items are commonly included on the bride's gift list. Family is an important aspect of Qatari culture. Children typically reside with their parents until they marry. Even after they married, a couple may live with the man's parents until they can afford their own place, which is usually close to their parents. Elders are highly recognized as wise in the Qatari family dynamic. As parents age, it is expected for their children to take care of them, even taking them into their own homes. Most Qatari families hire maids, drivers, gardeners, and nannies to assist at home. Each household in Qatar is part of a clan, which is a group of connected families according to Qatari culture. Clans are subsets of bigger tribes. Tribes are essentially enormous extended families. Although tribes were formally identified by differences in dialect, attire, and rituals, these distinctions have virtually vanished in modern Qatar. Nonetheless, tribe members' bonds remain strong. The Majlis is an important area in Qatari society. It is typically a male-only environment, with women gathering inside the home. The Majlis is a separate chamber near the entryway that permits visitors to avoid the more private areas of the house. Guests in the Majlis are served dates and Arabic coffee in tiny cups with no handles from a distinctively shaped pot called dalah. In Qatar, dressing has always been an important factor to consider. Because the customs and traditions in Qatar are primarily influenced by Islam, there is a clothing code that residents are obliged to obey. Men in Qatar wear a white full-length robe over trousers and an undershirt in accordance with Islamic norms. The robe is known as a thwab, and it is typically worn with sandals and a kafia, which is a white headscarf. In terms of women's attire, it is customary to wear a full-length black gown over Western apparel. The black outfit is known as an abaya. Most Qatari women, particularly older women, wear a thub, a long black coat that covers the entire body, and a hijab, a black head covering that exposes just the eyes, nose, and mouth. They are also keen to further their education and compete with males in many professions. Qatar University has far more female students than male pupils. Traditional roles in Qatar are institutionalized in legislation that distinguish between the rights and obligations of men and women. Wives, for example, are legally in command of their households and must obey their husbands. If they violate their husband's wishes, they may lose financial assistance. Religious and tribal conventions prohibit women from mixing with unrelated men, even for business purposes. Despite significant advances by women in recent years, the worlds of politics and economics remain dominated by men. Bedouin women are more conservative, and some wear the niqab veil to cover their faces. In Qatar, elders are expected to be treated with utmost respect. Younger members of the family frequently seek their guidance and suggestion, and their knowledge of family problems and the world in general is highly valued. Qataris call their grandmothers Yadaya or Yaditi, and their grandfathers Yadi. In public areas, it is usual to stand up while greeting others, especially the elderly, as a display of respect. Lastly comes the most difficult part of life: death. Qataris bury their dead as quickly as possible once death occurs. Qataris will cleanse the deceased body a specified number of times, usually an odd number, and typically 3 times, in preparation for the funeral. After a person dies, his or her eyes and mouth are physically closed. Their body is then totally covered and draped in plain white cloth called a kafan. This is not ostentatious, and it adheres to Islamic practice of not burying a person in or with anything rich or extravagant. In Qatar, the belief is that after death, a person does not require anything important. As a mark of respect, people gather to attend and give their tribute to the dead. There is no evidence of tombstones or gravestones in Qatari cemeteries, and coffins are not utilized. This is due to the Islamic belief that people should not return to a grave to speak to the dead. Instead, commemorate the deceased loved one at home. When a person in Qatar dies, they are given a piece of land in which to be buried. They cannot choose the location of their plot, which the Islamic culture believes is unimportant because it does not matter where the deceased is buried after death. In accordance with Sharia law and Islamic tradition, a person is then buried with their head towards Mecca. A dua prayer is offered in which those attending the funeral pray for the departed person's sins to be forgiven. Not only are the deceased's immediate relatives and family asked, but all the friends and family of the deceased, as well as those attending the funeral burial, are asked to do the same. This communal funeral prayer is performed before the deceased individual is lowered into the large open space that has been purposefully constructed for their burial. The corpse is buried within the pit, but the ground is never patted down. In fact, graves in Qatar and other Islamic burial sites are built as mounds. Only men attend funeral burials in Qatar, and while crying is acceptable and regarded normal during a death burial, wailing is not culturally acceptable. Cremation and embalming are likewise forbidden in Islam and are not practiced culturally. This communal funeral prayer is performed before the deceased individual is lowered into the large open space that has been purposely constructed for their burial. And that's a wrap. Let us know which country you'd want us to cover next. Don't forget to like and subscribe.